Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says BIMSTEC needs to reinvent itself. What is the context? We have the foreign ministers of the BIMSTEC, which stands for Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, who had met recently. In this particular backdrop, we have to understand what is the objective of setting up the BIMSTEC, what are the various challenges when it comes to the implementation of the objectives, and what is the way forward with respect to this cooperation. First up, we have to understand the background. BIMSTEC is an economic bloc. When did it come into existence? It came into existence in the year 1997 with the help of a Bangkok Declaration. So this particular economic bloc came into being in 1997 through what is called as the Bangkok Declaration. Initially, when this particular bloc was being formed, what we had is only four countries. What are those four countries? Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka and Thailand, and they formed what is called as the BIST Economic Cooperation. Eventually, with time, we also had Myanmar, which was included in this particular economic bloc, and we also have countries like Nepal and Bhutan, which are also becoming part of this particular bloc again in the year 2004. With all these three countries in this particular bloc, what we have is a new name called as the BIMSTEC. So currently, we have about 7 countries. It includes Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, Nepal as well as Bhutan. What are the objectives of this economic bloc? When you look into the objectives, they are primary two in number. One is the economic development of all these countries. The other is the collaboration between these countries. What do we mean by economic development? Let's say, for example, there are multiple sectors of the economy. It can be trade, investment and industry, technology, human resource development, tourism, agriculture, energy, infrastructure, transportation link between all these countries. Such areas will have to be improvised and infrastructural growth and development has to take place. That is what is meant by economic development between all these countries, for which what we require is the cooperation, for which what we require is mutual understanding. That is how collaboration steps into picture. So the overall agenda or the objective of the BIMSTEC is to accelerate the economic growth and social progress among all these member countries across multiple sectors. This is where we have to understand India's inclination towards the BIMSTEC. Why is India focusing towards BIMSTEC? We already have one of the groups called as the SAARC. We did discuss about it in our yesterday's CNA as well. So why is that India is moving away from South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation and drifting towards BIMSTEC? There are two possible reasons to it. What are those two possible reasons? One is the constant interference or impediment that which is caused by Pakistan. So as we discussed yesterday, the major reason why India is not focusing on SAARC is because all the initiatives taken by India will be a major obstacle for Pakistan, and Pakistan will not let India expand its horizon, which is why India is not that active when it comes to the SAARC and its operations. But when it comes to BIMSTEC, Pakistan is not in BIMSTEC, which is why India is supporting, espousing this very cause of developing the BIMSTEC countries. Apart from it, when you look into all these countries, what do we have? We have India, we have Myanmar, we have Thailand as well. So what we have is a connection between South Asia to the Southeast Asian part. So what are we doing here? We are not only spreading our wings in South Asia, where India is already a major stakeholder, as we have discussed in our yesterday CNA. So India is also spreading its wings in the Southeast Asia as well. So we will have much better understanding, we will have more exports, we will have more trade cooperation. So what is India focusing on? India is focusing on advancing not only in SAARC but also expanding its trade relationship when it comes to from South Asia to Southeast Asia. But there are problems when it comes to the execution. What are the executional problems? Let's go back to the year 2018. This is where we had the summit back in 2018, and after 2.5 years, now is when we have the summit that is taking place in 2021, which was a virtual summit. What do we understand with this? let's understand the other groupings as well. We have G20, we have ASEAN. In fact, we also had the SAARC grouping as well, where India was able to convince the SAARC countries have negotiations and interactions, and even during the testing times of COVID-19, India was able to bring all these groups, all these countries together. What do we have? We have all these blocks and organizations coming together discussing how cooperation can be enhanced even during the COVID-19. But when was the last time BIMSTEC took place? It was in 2018. When is it happening now? It is happening in 2021. So what it means is that BIMSTEC is not active when it comes to cooperation even at the COVID level. COVID was a major disaster to all the countries as well as the global community. Ideally, India and other countries with its political will should have come together, organize the BIMSTEC cooperation. But in this particular scenario, we did not have any cooperation summit. That is become the major problem, which is where the author says that BIMSTEC is lacking the political will. The last time that we met was in 2018, and that happened to be the Kathmandu summit. So this virtual summit is happening in 2021. So we missed out on an important opportunity to bring all the countries for the cooperative enhancement, says this article. When in 2018, all these countries, that is the countries which were present in BIMSTEC, met up, they thought that they'll come up with a charter. What is this charter? These are the set of obligations, these are the set of rulings that which they would be implementing in the next few years. So in 2018, under the Kathmandu summit, they came up with a charter which would provide a formal and a stronger foundation. So this particular charter will have a clear plan as to how the economic cooperation will be increased, what would be the trade opportunities that they are planning to encapsulate on, what are the other opportunities that will open up so that all these countries will have the economic development. That was the charter all about. And in the year 2021, when there was virtual summit recently that happened, the BIMSTEC countries have come up with this charter which will be implemented, which will be executed down the lane. What does this charter speak about? It speaks about the master plan for the transport connectivity, mutual legal assistance in criminal matters. What is this mutual legal assistance? Let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, there is cooperation that is required to make sure that the international terrorism that is happening along the border areas across all these countries are completely stopped. Or let's say, for example, we have what is called as the drug corridor between India, between the Southeast Asian countries like Myanmar. So this is illicit drug trafficking that is taking place. This has to be stopped. Or let's say, for example, there is organized crime that is taking along the border areas of all these countries. This one country would not be able to fight it. So what we require is the cooperation. So when all these countries come together, they ensure that all these things are eliminated, like organized crime, drug trafficking and international terrorism. That is called as the mutual legal assistance. So the mutual legal assistance is where one country cooperates with another country so that this whole process of drug trafficking is eliminated. Added to this, they are also planning to introduce cooperation between the diplomatic academies and the establishment of the technology transfer facility, which will come up in Colombo. This would be the charter which will be implemented when it comes to the next few years in the BIMSTEC plan group. But while all this is being executed, while all this will be executed, there are two problem areas, says the author. What are these problem areas? One, ideally, let's say, for example, when it comes to SAARC, what we have is a free trade agreement, or let's say, for example, NAFTA, which is in North America. They also have what is called as the free trade agreement. But when it comes to the BIMSTEC, ideally, they should have also discussed about the comprehensive free trade agreement. But unfortunately, in this particular summit, the free trade agreement, which was supposed to be planned, which was supposed to be implemented down the lane, was not taken into picture. Added to the ooze were the business community negligence. What do we mean by it? Let's say, for example, when we are speaking about advancing the people to people relationship, when we are speaking about economic development, or let's say, for example, we are planning to increase what is called as the per capita income for a particular country. What it requires is expansion of the businesses. So when you require the development in a particular region, the business has to be a major stakeholder in that particular country. So we would have different organizations, different industries, different establishments which will be conducting different types of businesses. So ideally, all the governments in this particular BIMSTEC should support the cause of the businesses. Unfortunately, in this virtual summit, there were no discussions about engaging the business community. Added to these issues are other hurdles that is blocking the full expanse of the BIMSTEC. What are those? One is the bilateral relationship. What do we mean by this? Let's say, for example, Nepal is part of BIMSTEC, or let's say, for example, Sri Lanka is part of BIMSTEC, or let's say, for example, Myanmar is part of the BIMSTEC. But what is happening? India and Nepal relationship is not going good. Or let's say, for example, we are speaking about India and Sri Lanka relationship. Is it going good? No. That is because of the Rajapaksa government that is in picture. Or let's say, for example, do we have good relationship between Bangladesh and Myanmar? No, once again. That is because of the Rohingya issue and its crisis. So what do we have is the bilateral issues which are haunting the BIMSTEC from expanding the horizons. That is the first hurdle. Then what we have is the SARC issue. There are other countries, let's say for example Sri Lanka, or let's say for example there are countries like Nepal which obviously want to expand on the SARC like operations. But here India is not able to expand the SARC operations or continue the free trade agreement in BIMSTEC, and that is causing a major problem for countries like Sri Lanka and Nepal. Then there is a third problem. We know for the fact that China has huge pockets. It also has huge money. What it also does is it gives monetary benefits to all the countries in and close by it. But we also know for the fact that there is trap diplomacy as well, which countries unfortunately fail to understand. But on the surface level, they have huge pocket, which we are all aware of. So what is happening when it comes to BIMSTEC is China's decisive intrusion is happening when it comes to South and Southeast Asian space, which means to say there is constant interference by China when it comes to the operations of BIMSTEC. In fact, there are scholars, in fact, there are political scientists who also say that there have been few countries which are also supporting the thought that China should be part of BIMSTEC as well. And finally, it is not going good when it comes to BIMSTEC because of the military coup in Myanmar. All these have been the major hurdles, and all this is not getting implemented because of the lack of the political will, which is a major problem for the full expanse and the execution of the objectives of BIMSTEC. In this particular backdrop, to overcome this particular issue, what BIMSTEC has to do is to reinvent itself. When you look at the achievements of BIMSTEC in the past, they were able to come together. They have ensured that there is humanitarian assistance and disaster relief as well, and they have stood by each other when it comes to the security issue. But going forward, what these countries will have to do is to conduct annual summits periodically. In case there are any issues that one country is facing, other countries will have to stand for them, cooperate at the multiple levels, and ensure that this BIMSTEC as a program, BIMSTEC as an economic bloc, BIMSTEC as a cooperative unit becomes a successful execution. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, in climate change noise, India's role as conductor. What is the context? United States Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry recently visited India. For what? For discussions about climate change. Before we understand what was the discussion all about, what was the epicenter of this particular issue, we have to understand some of the basics which will help us understand the discussion part. We have one of the concepts in environment called as the net zero concept, or this is also called as the carbon neutrality. What is this carbon neutrality or net zero concept? Let's say, for example, we take the example of India. Let's say in a particular year, India has released about 10,000 units of carbon. So what India has done? India has emitted about 10,000 units of carbon. Let's say, for example, in the same year, because India has emitted about 10,000 units of carbon, it has to be balanced. How? By absorbing 10,000 units of carbon from the atmosphere. So what is this net zero? Basically, we have emitted something. So in order to balance the emission, what we require is an absorbing capacity. So this absorbing capacity where we have emitted 10,000, so this 10,000 units has to be neutralized. So what do? We require some of the absorbing capacities that has to be compensated, where these greenhouse gases will have to be removed from the atmosphere. That is what is called as net zero concept. How do we do it? There are a couple of options that we can look at. One, let's say for example, the natural one, where we are increasing the number of forests. So this is acting as a carbon sink, and at the same time, let's say we are making use of the futuristic technologies. So what do? We increase the forest areas. How? By increasing the afforestation, by increasing the number of trees and increasing the forest areas, and at the same time ensuring that new technologies are adapted so that it is able to suck the carbon that is present in the atmosphere. So the concept of net zero is nothing but for the emissions that a particular country has given, it has to balance it, it has to counter it by absorbing the amount of carbon it has emitted. When it comes to the global countries, let's say for example, we have UK and France, or let's say for example, European Union. It has made rules, it has made regulations that it is planning to achieve net zero by the year 2050. Or let's say for example, we have Canada, South Korea, Japan and Germany. Even they have promised that eventually down the lane they will achieve net zero, that is carbon neutrality. And China has also promised the world that they would plan to implement this carbon neutrality status by the year 2016. But what is the major problem right now? The major problem right now is, amongst all these countries that we have discussed, we do not have India, which has told the world that it is planning to achieve net neutrality anywhere near the future. So what is that United States of America wants? The special presidential envoy for climate, that is John Kerry, wants India to be part of this particular process, achieve the net zero emission concept by the year 2050. So the whole concept, or why the visit happened, was to make sure that India also promises the world that by the year 2050, India also has what is called as the net zero or the carbon neutrality. But this is where India has objections. When you look into the statistics, India is the world's third biggest emitter of greenhouse gases. Who is the first? We have United States of America. Then it is followed by China as well, and India happens to be the third when it comes to the carbon emissions. But what is India objecting to? India during the next few years will want to uplift people as well. It wants to take the people off the poverty bracket. If India has to do that, what it requires is the expansion of the industrial activities. Since India is a developing country, since India has to take care of its people, since taking care of the people will mean expands of the industrial activities, expands of the industrial activities mean increase of the carbon emissions. So India is currently saying that we as a country will have to uplift our people away from the poverty line. So what we will not do is to stick by this particular guideline that we would achieve the net neutrality status by the year 2050. So what is India objecting? India is saying that we are a developing country. We want to ensure that climate change variations and all this is mattering to us as well. But the problem is, if we stick to this net zero compulsion, we would not be able to lift our people off the poverty. And that is why India has been objecting. And at the same time, India is also continuing with its afforestation program. India is also continuing with its reforestation program. India is also come up with its carbon removable technologies as well. But India has the ambiguity. India has the dilemma. India has the confusion. And India has a major complexity in hand. On one side, it has to make sure that it lifts people off the poverty. That is the agenda of the government. and at the other side, India also has to manage the climate change variations. Yes, we have come up with the ambitious renewable energy target, improvements in the energy efficiency, faster penetration of the electric vehicles, but these are all short term goals. So, what should India do? Apart from achieving these short term, India should go look at long term goals, says the author. So, what does the author say? Let's say, for example, we take the picture of North India. Let's say the Himalayan belt. We have already been witnessing the issues of climate change in Uttarakhand as well. We have seen flash floods happening. We have seen what is called as flooding that is taking place, and we have been witnessing landslides and avalanches when it comes to the Himalayan region. Let's come to the southern part of India. Let's say we have the coastal cities. Let's say important cities like Chennai, or let's say even Mumbai as well. What are these? These are the coastal cities. Increase of the temperature. So what we will witness is increase of the sea level water. So all these areas, that is the adjoining areas, when it comes to the sea, will also come under the water. So what we have is the increase in the sea level. And at the same time, let's say for example, if people in North India, or let's say for example people at the coastal lines, they start moving interior towards the central part of India. In case they do move to the central part of India, there are drought prone areas as well. And you consider Rajasthan, it is already drought prone as well. So what do we have is that we will have environmental refugees or climate refugees who will start moving from one part of the country to another. So what will happen if India does not take into picture the issues of climate change? What we will see is that people will become environmental refugees in our own country. In order to overcome this particular issue, the author says it is not only about the short term goals, but it is also about the long term objectives. So he says that India will have to stick to a particular target. India will have to ensure that it is sticking by the long term commitment. Apart from this, the author also makes another important factor. He says if India is not able to stick to it, we can come up with an alternative plan. What is this alternative plan? According to World Bank, it classifies a high income country as one with gross national per capita income of $12,536 or more in 2019 prices. So any high income country should not get more than 15 to 20 years to achieve net zero emissions from 2020 onwards. Let's say for example, because United States of America is already achieved it in 2021, if it has to achieve net zero compulsion, net zero target, the time that it has to be given is maximum up till 2035 and 2040. As of now, United States of America is targeting 2050, but this has to be reduced by 10 years. That is because they've already achieved great when it comes to the development, and at the same time, if we are fixing 15-20 years, it means they have to meet this target by 2035. And at the same time, China will reach this income category in the year 2025. It has to achieve the status of net zero by the year 2045 rather than 2060, says the author. And India is expected to become a high income economy by the year 2050. So by the year 2070, India has to achieve this carbon neutrality status. So India should not give reasons that it is a developing country. So when it comes to the climate change, irrespective of what has happened in the past, irrespective of what will happen in the future with respect to emissions, every single country will have to take the responsibility to make sure that climate change targets are met, says the author. Apart from this, let's say for example, we have number of climate change technologies which countries are coming up with. Let's say United States of America or Australia has this technology. If this technology has to be transferred, there should be no profit that is kept in mind. Why? Because climate change is not only going to impact one single country, every single country will be targeted by the nature. So when it comes to transfer of the technology, profit should not be the agenda, but humanity, concern towards humans, should be the major agenda, says the author. So going forward, any country should not only look at the short term targets or the long term targets, both should be viewed mutually and should be respected, and all the obligations will have to be met, says the author. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says another beginning, and we also have another article called as lessons from COVID-19. Both these articles will be merged together and we will take it as one single article. The article here makes a mention of a word called as the pharmacovigilance. What is this pharmacovigilance? Let's say for example, if there is an issue like COVID-19, how do we overcome it? By giving vaccines to the people? Or let's say there is one of the disease. How does a person overcome it? By taking a drug or a medicine? But let's say for example, a drug is administered or a vaccine is administered to a particular person, there might be adverse effects or there might be side effects which can result in that particular person. So having a constant vigilance on the adverse effects and the side effects is what is called as the pharmacovigilance. So the pharmacovigilance is the science and activities relating to the detection, assessment, understanding and prevention of adverse effects or any other medicine vaccine related problem. So once this vaccine or the medicine is administered to that particular person, if there are any side effects or adverse effects because of it, all these issues will have to be overcome. That is what is called as pharmacovigilance. So when it comes to pharmacovigilance, we have to identify the unknown adverse effects, we have to identify the frequency and severity of it, and we have to make sure that in case there is any risk associated with it, over a period of time, we have to improvise on the safety. Why are we discussing this? That is because when it comes to India, we are seeing what is called as the second wave of COVID-19. During this particular period, we have only two vaccines right now. One is the Covishield, the other is the Covaxin, and government of late has given permission. It has formally approved another vaccine candidate called as Sputnik 5. This can be used under emergency use authorization. How is that India is giving permission? Let's say for example, there is one of the vaccine which has been given approval in United States of America, or let's say there is another vaccine which has been given approval by United Kingdom, or let's say there is the World Health Organization, it has given permission for the emergency use of one particular vaccine. If all these major countries have already approved, then such vaccines are giving permission by India. So they need not have to go through the clinical trial process because it has already been approved by that country where clinical trials has already been conducted. So what we require is a constant check, says the author. Apart from this, let's say for example, India has already entered into an agreement with one of the private companies. The private companies has told India that it would be ready to provide all these vaccines. But when it comes to the private players, they look at profits. If there is another country which is planning to give more to this particular private company, India might also suffer as well. So what the author suggests, yes, we have made a choice. Yes, we have entered into an agreement with the private seller, but that does not mean we can relax. What we have to make sure is pay as much as possible so that the people of the country are administered with the vaccine. Apart from this, there are different programs that are being executed in different countries. Let's say recovery or remap cap or the World Health Organization led solidarity trial as well. In all these cases, what do we actually witness is that if there is a drug which is being given to a COVID-19 patient, whether this particular drug is actually efficient or not will be tested by all these programs. Initially, when COVID-19 hit the world, there was a particular presumption that COVID-19 can be eliminated with hydroxychloroquine. But all these tests have proved that such hydroxychloroquine, if it is given to the patient, is of no use, especially when it comes to COVID-19. It is of no use, said all these programs. So going forward, when such medicines are being administered, they should be completely ruled out. So all those health workers who are being administering these type of hydroxychloroquine or similar drugs should completely avoid, says this article. So going forward, when it comes to this particular area of approving the vaccines, giving the medicines, what we require is pharmacovigilance, says these two articles. It is this that we have to understand in reference to both these articles. Now let's look into the next article. This article says a small step. The article here is speaking about medical termination of pregnancy. We have discussed this analysis elaborately on 7th of April 2021. So kindly look into it, understand what is this issue all about. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Incorporating climate justice policies to answer climate crisis will equip the society better to handle environmental risks associated with climate change analysis. Next question. The failure of SAARC to nurture cooperation in South Asia has pushed India to search for an alternative in the form of BIMSTEC. Do you agree? Substantiate. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.